Okay, chingus. Again, we're pluralizing chingu, which means friend in Korean. All of you are our chingus who are watching here today. I got to start with the most important piece of news, though, that's on the table, which is Kevin. How did you and your wife like BTS? My
Oh
wife
yeah.
loved it.
Oh man. It was amazing. It was amazing. The funny thing is, I actually didn't even know. I only knew one of the seven like people before I went to the concert, and I had to like study up a lot on their songs. But they are very good performers. There's a lot of screaming in the stadium, so my
Mm-hmm.
ears were like ringing for like the next day or two. But it was a lot of fun, and they know how to put on a really good show. So it's amazing.
Yeah, my wife loved it too. She went to the so you're at the Stanford show on Saturday. My wife went on Tuesday, and she was like, it was such a diverse crowd. A lot of non-Koreans there, but everyone knew all the Korean lyrics perfectly. So that's good news for me and Ian when the invasion takes place, the Korean
Exactly.
secret
Yeah.
plot to take over the world. So Kevin's part of it now. Now that he's married into the, we'll tell you all about it later. So anyway, beyond that big piece of news that BTS is excellent, what a freaking week. Maybe we can actually start with combining a couple of open AI stories into like a one big discussion. So let me do the quick fire. Number one is Sam Altman, or sorry, OpenAI, aka Sam Altman, won his lawsuit against X, I guess what, just Elon Musk, right? So like Elon Musk, they had a big public kind of spat. There's lots of embarrassing details and discovery shared and leaked to the public, but ultimately OpenAI won. I think it was largely on a statute of limitations grounds. That's part one. Part two is sort of related to OpenAI is OG founder Andrej Karpathy, who is considered like the voice of AI. His YouTube channel is like incredible, is and also the person who like perfected autopilot for Tesla is joining Anthropic. That's a big story, and that happened the day that I think the Musk lawsuit got settled. Number three, I saw we had the chat about this, but like there's a broader discussion around like why does Sam Altman try like why are there so many attempts to fire Sam Altman about the same thing, which is lying. So this is basically related to the lawsuit that Elon Musk put together. And here's the last OpenAI story before we start talking about this thing, which is apparently there is some news that OpenAI has started to put grounds for filing for their IPO sooner than a lot of people thought, right? Uh, this story we saw was as early as tomorrow is like where they want to really file for an IPO, but I think that has been disputed. But it seems like it's going to happen pretty soon. So a lot of OpenAI news. Ian, let's go to you, man. So like, what was most interesting that stood out? Like either the four stories that we just introduced, or something else that you kind of noticed this week about the state of OpenAI.
Yeah, I think this has been going for a while, so things nothing was unexpected. Um, the only thing that got my attention was the lawsuit was thrown out of the court because it's out of the range for statute of
Yeah,
the law, so
limitations. Yep.
limitations. So I think that was coming, but it's just that it opened a lot of floodgates. I mean, it just didn't make any decisions yet. So now you can still start a non-profit company and become for-profit company at some point and go IPO. So that's one thing that got my attention. But other than that, we knew Anthropic is taking over OpenAI. Karpathy going to Anthropic, well, not really expected, because he had his own company. But if he's joining somewhere, we knew it's going to be Anthropic. So I think, and OpenAI is hurrying up in terms of IPO because they don't want, people to see the S1 of Anthropic first, then seeing that of OpenAI. So I think, they're making the right moves, but I don't know how that's going to end up.
We're gonna come back to Anthropic in just a sec, but Kevin, what was some of those reactions when we heard like all this news and been processing the big week that OpenAI has had, which doesn't sound like a very good week.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like every week we talk about like the state of the big LLMs, like it seems like there's constantly negative news coming out for OpenAI relative to Anthropic. I mean, I think the one of the points that an influencer actually on Instagram had made regarding the lawsuit was that Elon had, and we talked about this briefly as well, is that Elon brought about that lawsuit as a way to really take time away from Sam Altman and his team to focus on like building the business and making it the best business possible and fixing things. And also, like, I don't know if this was true, but he said that the reason why Sam couldn't go to China was also because of the lawsuit, where all the big tech leaders, you know, including Elon Musk, Jensen, and others, went with President Trump to meet with Xi Jinping. But Sam, you know, noticeably was not there, right? So I think
Neither was Dario, though.
that's true. That's true. Dario wasn't there either. That's true. But I feel like Dario is a very like, at least from what I've seen, seems to keep very low profile.
Yeah.
Like I haven't seen him really go speak at a lot of events or like open public kind of forums, and I wonder if that's like on purpose as well. Of like, let's just keep it low profile. Let's make sure the business is amazing, and like me going out to speak, you know, going to the public eye is not really the point, right? Like it's not going to yield probably any benefits.
Or they have an actual PR team, unlike OpenAI.
Yeah, yeah. So anyways, the point that this influencer, and I apologize, I don't remember the guy's name, made very convincingly was that the lawsuit was just a way to kind of slow down OpenAI at the expense of, you know, helping SpaceX, XAI, as well as Anthropic, you know, continue to take more and more share and continue to improve their position, right, relative to OpenAI. Which looks like, at least in the last few weeks, has yielded some positive results in that favor, right?
I mean, it certainly has, but I think unequivocally, even though they won the lawsuit, OpenAI, they definitely lost in my eyes, right? This for me was like a very spurious lawsuit to start with. We had talked about this in previous Three Commas podcast, but the court of public opinion, it yielded some really embarrassing details, right? It just makes Sam look quite weak. Some of those like thirsty text threads that we had dissected and so forth. And also just like the fact that there's a lot of self-dealing that seems to be perceived of just like, oh, like we leverage this position to like get billions of dollars of value personally from the Cerebras IPO and these other kinds of cool deals that are taking place. And it felt very self-dealing, at least the way that it was told. And man, like Musk did a really good job of, I think, frankly, tweaking his algorithm and his own kind of proxies on X to really like double down on some of these really nuanced details that are quite embarrassing. So feels like a big loss. And is this going to be like how it works at the top of tech now? It was just like these weird pissing matches. I guess like a question for you, Kevin. Like to some degree, this has been existing in areas of high finance for quite some time, right? These like kind of like corporate raider types. You know, they used to like go through the newspapers to like drop allegations against each other. Like, has that like culture kind of just fully now entrenched itself in tech?
I think there's always been a little bit of that, even in like tech and startup worlds, regardless. Like, I mean, I don't know if it was as kind of dramatic before, but there was always probably a bit of rivalry between, you know, Apple, Microsoft. You know, remember the ads? You know, I'm a Mac, I'm a PT. You know, it was probably less like ad hominem about like, oh, you know, Steve Jobs versus like Bill Gates, but there's still probably some of that, you know, as well back then. But it was more about like, oh, you know, our company's products are better than yours in some ways, right? And I'm sure the same can be said about like Google, Meta, or Facebook, you know. And so I think there's always been a little bit of it, but it's also gotten a lot more spicy recently, partially because probably, you know, Elon is making Twitter like kind of like the gossip, you know, city, what do they call it? Like City Hall?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Agora.
yeah, like the marketplace of gossip that like he wanted it to be, right? He wanted to be like a forum of discussion, but now it's kind of become a little bit of like an ad hominem, like attack each other type of place, which I don't know if is probably productive, but at least like people are airing their like grievances out there.
I think what Kevin said earlier also has a point around that too, because I think the timing of these three IPOs are really critical. So looks like, you know, Anthropic is better, might be better in terms of their S1 or their performance, and OpenAI might be better than XAI. So maybe Elon wanted to stop OpenAI going public and showing their finances before he shares his finances on XAI. And also XAI, I mean, OpenAI wants to go public before Anthropic so that people sees OpenAI's financials before Anthropic's financials. So maybe that's a chain effect that, hey, XAI doesn't want OpenAI go IPO before them, but then OpenAI doesn't want Anthropic go IPO before them. So that's why their timeline is very tight right now. And I don't know. It's I think I really want to see Anthropic's finances, actual finances, because there's been a lot of allegations that they are exaggerating their finances and performances and revenue and all that. So I think once we see that and see if they're actually profitable, I think that's going to change, the market dynamics or IPO dynamics to some degree.
Actually, let's stay on that, Ian, because this is a good segue into the next story we were discussing. So it was a Wall Street Journal article that was published yesterday about Anthropic and its performance. So I'm reading the byline. It says the startup expects 130% revenue surge to 10.9 billion in the June quarter and its first operating profit, defying skeptics of the AI boom. So contrast this to OpenAI. Now I'm going to mess up this number. I try to remember this improperly. Didn't they lose something like 18 billion in a quarter in their most recent quarter? Something pretty large, right? And then now Anthropic is in this story in the Wall Street Journal there's a claim that it's in an operating profit zone. I mean, that is a wild juxtaposition. So Ian, how do you sort of process all this? Do you think that there's even a motivation for Anthropic to IPO before OpenAI? I don't even know if that timing matters.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's still also about liquidity in the market. Because the massive IPO of SpaceX will suck up all the liquidity from the market, and OpenAI will do the same. Maybe they can take them over from those companies back to Anthropic later on, but I don't know how excited they will be. So if OpenAI messes up their IPO, or maybe they go IPO and the stock plunges to 30% or 40%, 50%, and people will get scared of Anthropic's IPO too because they've seen something similar. So I think they're I would say the market comparisons, market comp.
Yeah.
So that's why whoever goes first will be the baseline, and they don't want to mess it up to some extent. But I'm just curious how Anthropic got profitability so early for entire quarter. I know they've been playing with they're throttling the data and the speed and performance of the model to some extent because I can feel it.
Yeah, I can too.
Yeah, reducing the performance of the model to save money, but I just don't have any, way to leave Cloud Code ecosystem already. So I'm just dealing with it. But I don't know. It's just amazing because I think XAI is also losing about $3 to $4 billion per quarter. So I think they're expecting about $10 billion loss this year. So how did Anthropic do that?
I mean, Kevin,
That's
first of all, any
I also
theory.
don't trust that.
Yeah. Okay. Do you also think that there's real skepticism around these numbers? And then I do want to go back to your investment banking days of timing. Ian's making a very interesting point around liquidity in the market. And if there's two giganto IPOs before you, does that actually create a timing issue for an Anthropic if they want to go last? So maybe reactions on any of those two.
Yeah, I mean, on the profitability question, right? I mean, this is just rumors, as I think the Anthropic is actually raising a fundraising round right now.
Yep.
And
They are.
so this is why the numbers are kind of floating around kind of in the public at this point, because they probably had to disclose a lot of this to the large investors that they're courting right now. And so it looks like revenues increased from about 5 billion to almost 11 billion quarter over quarter, which is pretty crazy actually,
So nuts.
and around 560 million in operating income, which would be crazy. I think the thing I would also pause a little bit on though is keep in mind that they probably are still burning quite a bit of cash, right? Just because operating profit is it's a P&L statement metric or income statement metric, so it doesn't actually capture what's happening on like capital expenditures, working capital, and there's a good chance they're still investing a ton in hardware and servers that they probably are still burning quite a lot of cash, even though their operating profit as a metric may be positive. And so, I think it's obviously good that they're operating profit positive, though, if that is true. I just don't have any visibility into it. I haven't seen any of the materials. I would hope that Anthropic has audited financials that, the auditors can stand by. I think a big push that they've made is basically enterprise adoption, which is where they've been able to drive higher profitability, as well as a ton more of revenue growth, right? But I don't know if that's enough to basically explain how they turned profitable, I think like 2 years earlier than they originally projected. As to the question on like the public markets, it's an interesting one. I have no idea really what the answer is. I think, if you look at the size of a lot of these like public markets investors out there, right? These are kind of mutual funds, index funds types of folks like, Wellington, Fidelity, and also like big sovereign wealth funds, right? That will be anchors or cornerstone investors into an IPO. I do think they have, a significant amount of capital still left to deploy. I do question how they're going to think about allocating it between OpenAI, Anthropic, SpaceX. There's a couple of big names in the pipeline that people, I mean, even like Databricks, right? I think is a name that, a big snowflake competitor that a lot of people thought was going to go public for a while, but still hasn't. But given where, Cerebras, I think it's a story that we talked about, but like a AI
Yep.
chip maker, just like their IPO went spectacularly. And I think the stock went up 2 or 3x literally in a span of days after they first IPO'd. I think a lot of these big company, large late stage private companies have decided, okay, that's a good enough sign for us to get into the water. Like I think the markets are ready for us. So I think it could be like a huge party. Like I think if they do go, like SpaceX, Anthropic, IPO, they all go in the next like couple of months. I think there probably is enough dry powder, though I haven't done the math on this, that we could see these things really continue to pop. In which case we're like back in bull market, COVID era, I guess, which would be crazy. Or who knows if there's just way too much big, kind of marquee names coming to the market where public markets investors don't have that much dry powder to actually deploy into all these names.
So I'm curious, like who fills the book usually? Is it mostly at this point sovereign wealth, like the Saudis and things like that?
My understanding is it's still a lot of these big mutual funds,
It is, yeah.
so like the Fidelity, Wellington, BlackRocks of the world. Um, yeah, but I mean, these large sovereign wealth funds are large existing private investors in these companies, right? And I don't think they're going to sell, so they'll probably continue to hold on to a big portion of the public float of these businesses still.
Yeah.
But they might shuffle, like reshuffle from big tech to OpenAIs and SpaceX. So they might sell some shares from Meta or Google,
Oh,
Apple.
interesting.
That's gonna affect, I don't know, current tech markets to some extent. I don't know how that's gonna affect the, market sentiment to some extent. So I don't know. It's a wild times ahead if those companies go IPO and people start to sell Google stocks or Meta stocks to buy SpaceX stocks. And
Um,
yeah.
I mean, that's that is interesting. I guess like they would class tech stocks as like a sub asset sector, right? It's like we have like our public equities, but within that we want like this portion of the pie. I'm using my hands as a pie if you can't see it for the audience. That's just tech, and they just reshuffle. Then it's just like they're rebalancing into like the new AI stuff. Is that the theory?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
I'm asking you because you're the ex-sovereign wealth guy, Ian.
I think there's a certain portion that they're researching right now.
Okay.
You need to have a research like 3 months ahead and kind of stuff. So it takes a little bit of time for them to hop on a new stock.
Yeah.
But
All right.
once
Well,
they get into the index, it's automatically adjusted anyway. So
that's true. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to a few more stories here. So we're still on the theme of IPO, and we got to talk about SpaceX. So actually, Kevin, let me turn to you. SpaceX IPO filing has happened. Have you had a chance to read the S1 and some of the wild shit that is inside of that?
A little bit here and there. We are closing 3 deals this week, so it's been very busy.
Okay.
But I think it's really interesting, right? I would love to hear your guys' takes on what you guys think is interesting. I think one is obviously Starlink is probably a huge piece of the
It's like
upside.
underwriting hit 50% or something of the revenue at this point. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Which I think was always the story, though. To be honest, from what I heard, talking to like public markets investors and like all the equity research analysts, like even a year or two ago, when you looked at research reports they had done on SpaceX, it was always underwriting that Starlink is going to be, a multi-hundred billion or even like $1 trillion business if you assume X% of the global population buys a subscription to the service,
Yep.
which you could imagine, like, we were talking about it actually before the podcast we
Yeah.
started
I
recording.
contributed to that top line revenue. I bought a mini
Exactly.
recently.
Eric is a fan.
You're welcome.
And I mean this I've used it on a plane. Like it's amazing, right? I haven't bought the hardware and tried it while I'm traveling yet, but I've used it on a plane with like United flights are starting to roll out Starlink,
Yep.
and it's super
Really good.
fast. It's like 300 megabytes per second on a plane. Wi-Fi is like unheard of, right? And
Yeah.
so you could, but I don't think they'll allow you. But you could take Zoom calls, like in the airplane if you wanted to. We could
Or
record a
record a
podcast.
3 commas podcast, man, right?
Exactly. So I think that's probably the big kind of headline from a business side. The other interesting thing I saw, and I'll pass it off you guys for other things you guys are thinking about, that Musk owns like a vast majority of like the voting power. So he has super voting shares, which give him about 85% voting power post the, pre the IPO, but post the IPO, it still stays way above 50%. So he essentially like owns full control of the business and what he wants to do with it, which I think is not it's not surprising. Like Google and Facebook, Meta always had same like super voting kind of shares for their founders. So I don't think it's necessarily that surprising. But it continues to show that like there's this kind of Elon. I think they are not shying away from the fact that he's clearly like a key man, and they don't view that as a risk. It sounds like they're viewing that as like a positive. Like this is Elon. If you believe in Elon, then you want to buy this company.
Yeah. Ian, did you do a close reading of the S1? I don't know if there's some things that stood out for you.
I just published something this morning after
Oh.
reading it. I think key things. I mean, SpaceX is great, and everybody expect. I mean, when I was underwriting SpaceX, my thesis was they're gonna get the Starlink portion separate and go IPO for Starlink only. So that's gonna be $1 trillion company. But it went the other way around. Actually, Starlink acquired XAI and X and going public now. So I also wrote, and I've been telling people about this, like, I'm disappointed that SpaceX being polluted by XAI and their
Yeah.
their
They're absorbing
financials.
all the debt and all that stuff, right? Yeah.
Exactly. This is pure financial engineering for Elon Musk, and his companies. And now the profitable company, SpaceX, became a money losing business that are losing about $10 billion every year. And the capex spending of this company now is about $30 billion. And most of them are AI data centers. So, and other parts of the problems is that SpaceX bought about $800 million worth of cars and related goods from Tesla. Um,
Yeah,
and
Cybertruck.
Tesla bought about $500 million amount of stuff from XAI too. So it's essentially SpaceX is saving Elon Musk's entire business lines. So it's just sad and annoying to see this again. And I just wrote this like I've been a big fan of SpaceX forever, but once it goes IPO, I'm gonna sell it, and I wouldn't recommend any of my friends to buy it. So it's a great company. I think this could be, you know, the it's going to change the trajectory of the humanity. Like this company will bring us to the Mars and everything, but it's just being a victim to fulfill Elon's ego to compete with OpenAI and Sam Altman and AI stuff, and it's being, you know, financially engineered ruin of Elon Musk's businesses. So
Um,
I mean, it's sad.
it is, but it's also kind of funny. So let me talk to you about this. Okay, I had a great conversation with my ex-banker friend, who's not Kevin as well, Sheehan, my co-founder at Hustle Fund. So she used to work at JP Morgan, and she worked on a bunch of IPOs. And she's like, you don't understand like how weird this whole thing is when you read the S1. She's like, all of the people who are representing the deal, the banks as well as all their lawyers, they get into a room with the CEO and the C-suite team, and they read line by line the entire S1 prospectus together to make sure that all of it looks right. And she's like, can you imagine being in that room with your bank, all of your team, your lawyers, reading line by line this prospectus and seeing things like Elon Musk is tying a future performance bonus and compensation plan contingent on 1 million people being on the colony in Mars, assuming also that the company reaches a $7.5 trillion valuation. And like, it's just like, this is like made up shit. Like, how is that even possible that for 1 million human beings to be in Mars in his lifetime? Ian, what, you have a finger in your mouth, like ready to say something?
I think, and their TAM was the entire U.S. economy. I think that's what the TAM is. Yeah.
But just like being in that room, listening to like the freaking like SpaceX team like going through this, reading it like line by line. I mean, that how do you not like look around and be like, are you fucking like hearing the same shit that I am? Like analyst Kevin, like this is like sheer madness.
I think you have to keep in mind these bankers are like paid by, you know, Elon's like the client, right? These bankers are gonna nod their head and do whatever, you know, SpaceX wants to do.
Yes, but the lawyers, do you think the like isn't there some sort of like representation liability or something like that, like reps and warranties or something?
Not really. I mean, kind of maybe, but like technically none of what you said is like legally, you know,
True. It's just
like
ridiculous, but not illegal.
it's just out there, right? It's a little bit
Yeah.
out there. And I don't know, who knows if we'll have 1 million people on Mars. But like tying that as a performance metric is not like, you know, it's not illegal to do that. If Elon really believes that's going to happen, right? But yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think reading it, you know, all of us are like, oh, this is kind of crazy. But I think that's always been Elon's goal, right? Is like he wanted to colonize Mars. He wanted to colonize other planets. And I think maybe we lose sight of what his original goal is because obviously Starlink has done so well, which is basically like, let's provide really great Wi-Fi to the entire world. But you know, originally his goal was to actually like make humans a interplanetary species, so that we could, you know, propagate and make sure that we don't become extinct if for whatever reason the Earth is uninhabitable at some point in time, right? Which I think is a very noble, like humanity-oriented mission. But I guess it shows that he still believes that's like part of his mission.
I'm always curious about your opinion on this, though. But like, people promise these dreams. You know, Elizabeth Holmes had a dream, and she had a promise, and it's to some extent it's actually manipulating people. You know, especially stock market. I mean, FSD is not here yet. Full self-driving is not here after 12 years. And he's been lying through this entire Tesla story forever. And he's, I think, lying about Optimus too. And where is the line? Like, okay, I mean, it's it's just crazy. People just fall for these kind of stuff. Like everybody knew FSD will take time. Optimus will take a lot more time than what he's saying, and he's been lying about this at least 8 years. Um, Full self-driving will be available for all the cars, and now hardware is not good enough. All this, the battery is 4680 battery. The new battery is going to change all the dynamics. It's still worse than current battery that we have, and I don't know why people just let this happen over and over. Like nobody's calling it out. Nobody's selling Tesla stocks. It's just the crazy. I guess Elon has done something for sure. He made Tesla. I drive Tesla. He made SpaceX happen, but his overpromising is actually, to some degree, like delusional and manipulative to my eyes. So I don't know. He believes it. Maybe it's not illegal, but it's just too much.
I mean, this kind of harkens back to, I think, a behavior that I thought was a little bit manipulative when I arrived to Silicon Valley as well. So Silicon Valley back in like the early 2000s, when I got here, was more idealistic, a little bit more hippie, I gotta say. And you know, you'd have these tech founders who are very different from the founders today. I think this is when like Larry and Sergey were driving Priuses and eating at McDonald's and very nondescript, even though they're billionaires at that point. Like they would sort of pitch this thing of like, join my company, employee, because we're going to make the world a better place, right? So money was always an aspect of it, but actually I would say that the balance of like we're pursuing a mission that's greater than yourself, right? So sometimes when I hear these things of like we're going to put 1 million people in Mars, like I wonder whether it is a motivator of just like come work for me and come support this mission, because ultimately what we're doing is greater than money, right? And it feels far more hollow these days coming from Elon Musk, but like I sense that, you know, we're in an era where I feel like people are a little bit less about trying to massage that message of like, oh, what we're doing with Polymarket is going to improve the world or Pornhub or whatever it is, right? Like it's like, you know, it's more of just we're going to make an ass ton of money, right? But he's a bit of an OG builder himself, and I wonder if that still matters for him, is to sort of gaslight himself into thinking like, I'm doing this not because of I'm being really rich, I'm really like saving the world. So, I don't know if this is
I actually think he doesn't really care about money that much, right? Well, I don't know. We'll see. But like there are a number of things that point to like he lives, from what I understand, very modestly. I think there were reports that he lived in a pretty small home for a very long period of time. Even though he's like the richest man in the world, like I don't know if he even has like a mega yacht like all the other people do.
Yeah.
Like I actually don't know, but I haven't heard much about it if he does have one. Whereas like Bezos's thing is like, you know, always in the news, and you know, name your other kind of like tech billionaire who has, you know, the bigger yacht. And so I could maybe believe that, but I do agree with you, Eric. I feel like it's very hard in this AI era for founders to make a case that like they're making the world a better place when they're building AI technology and products, because effectively we're saying like we're going to put a lot of humans out of a job, or like we're going to automate a lot of things, right? And so maybe we'll make the world a more productive and you know, easier to live place, but I don't know if it's necessarily good for broader kind of like humanity and like human population right now in terms of the huge displacement that's going to happen in the near term.
Yeah.
I think Elon's more driven by power, and money is
Yes.
his way of buying power. So that's why he's trying to save Tesla and everything. So I don't know. Maybe he's trying to move to Mars because he cannot be the president because he's from South Africa. So, and start his own dynasty in Mars or something. He could be the emperor of the Mars. So I don't know. That's one theory that we had.
Sometimes being more power is not being the president, being the most powerful person on the planet, right? So I would argue that like he might be already there, and you know, also if he does get the 1 million people on Mars, doesn't that pretty much make him the emperor of Mars at that point?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well that sounds pretty good. First emperor of Mars, Mr. Musk. let's go on to the last story, which is a very big departure from all the IPO hysteria that we've been talking about. And this is the story around Minnesota being the first state to ban prediction markets, which is definitely going to lead to some sort of federal court battle, right? So this is from Governor Walz. You know, he is making a real big statement here around, we shouldn't have like Kalshi and Polymarket legal in this state. And Trump, I think, his administration is very pro prediction marketplaces. I think they even have some exposure within the family behind some of these platforms. So, I've always been really nervous about prediction marketplaces. Like, I understand why they're really good businesses, but philosophically, I've been against actually the idea that we should be making prop bets on everything in life. And in fact, this is setting up for a lot of problematic insider trading, which we discussed in the past. Right, you can look at some of the things like, there's rumors that seem pretty strong that around even things like the conflict with Iran. Insiders in the administration appear to be making bets and enriching themselves, and that creates incentive also for like we should prolong the war or do certain things in the war where we can enrich ourselves, and maybe there's no motivation to end this conflict. So I mean that's more of the philosophical side of it. But do you guys actually think that Minnesota has a chance of winning this case of banning prediction marketplaces?
No.
No, I don't think so. No way in hell.
No way in hell. No.
What's the
But
point of this
it's-
exercise? Is it political
it's a
then?
noble
Just to be like,
gesture.
yeah.
It's
a noble gesture.
A noble gesture, and it's gonna start a movement, I guess. Like, what if California and New York hop on this train, and then might spark national debate on Polymarket and Kalshi? Because I've always been against this. I think this is pure gambling, and it's fucking crazy that we let people do this. And this, if they want to do this, they should be under SEC, not the random. I don't know, I forget the name, but there's got to be insider trading issues, and yeah, all these kind of different securities issues, and that needs to be solved. But I think somebody has to stand up to the government or the current administration and call this is fucking gambling. And Minnesota did it, and I am proud of it, to be honest. And I think California and New York and Texas, maybe Texas is not going to do it, but we should open a train and try to figure out how we're going to regulate this market. Because I think a lot of people are making money out of this, especially from current administration, and that's why they're letting people to do this. I don't know. I just don't see the difference between this and gambling, for sure.
Yeah. Kevin, any last word on this one? Like, have you been following these prediction markets?
No, I completely agree. I think prediction markets are gambling. There's a lot of insider information, but also like insider influence. I mean, something that was a little bit more innocuous, but similar, where people are making money off of this and influencing the outcome. I think there was something about like a weather. There was one about like a weather probe. It was like the temperature in some place is going to be above or below a certain temperature, and the person found like the temperature probe that was supposed to collect the data to validate that specific prediction, and they went and brought like a hair dryer or something to like heat it up to like the right to the temperature he gambled on, right, and basically won the bet because of that. So it's just like super prone to like, I think, manipulation, and something like this just needs to be like regulated, or I mean, if we just all agree that like gambling is a vice and it just shouldn't be allowed, there's a reason why casinos are only allowed in certain places, certain ages, certain jurisdictions. But we probably should be regulating this in the exact same way because it is just as prone to all these issues.
Yeah, really well said. Well, good luck, Governor Walz, in the state of Minnesota in this fight. It'll be interesting to see what lands and if there's going to be some opinions from the Supreme Court that can sort of dictate the future of this interesting industry. But you know what, guys? I do have a prediction to make that I would like to put on Polymarket, which is that these three chingus here are going to be friends for life, and our podcast is going to blow up even beyond Korea in a matter of time. So let me try to figure out how to sign up for a Polymarket account tonight to place that bet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's put it on to let's make sure that makes it onto Polymarket or Kalshi.
Yeah.
How
What
many
would be really
subscribers are we gonna have by the end of the year?
well, you know what Kevin's gonna do? He's gonna be like putting an anonymous bet of like, I bet that they're gonna fall out and cancel the podcast next episode, and then you're gonna like blow up on us and melt down and make a ton of money, right?
There you
So,
go. There you go. And there'll be
uh,
not that many. There won't be much liquidity for this specific bet, though, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah, we got the lockup on our IPOs coming up, so we'll see what happens.
But do
But
they
okay,
know the
Ian,
lockups for SpaceX IPOs?
I don't. So, okay, I actually
Bloomberg
do have
has
some
it.
intelligence on this. I talked to someone about this. Um, Apparently, there were rumors that there'd be no lockup, but I think actually there is going to be. However, it's going to be you will there will be unlocks a little bit sooner for like some interesting liquidity reasons. I gotta pull up like the message I saw from my colleague. She was the one that was running an SPV into this thing. So she thinks that you'll be able to pull out. It's not going to be like a typical 6 month, and there could be
Uh-huh.
windows where you pull out capital earlier. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it has this very strange structure, actually. I'll send it to you guys after this. But it's like after the second full trading day after Q2 2026 earnings release, 20% is transferable. And then there's like tranches after that of like additional 7 to 10%, 70 days after offering, 90 days, 105 days, 120 days. It's like a really complicated tranching structure,
Yeah.
which well, I mean, I think it kind of makes sense because you probably do want to control like there's going to be a lot of trading in and out of this, and you want to make sure that you don't create some really negative incentives. If it's like unlocks after one specific day, then everyone's going to sell. There will probably be quite a bit of selling pressure, right? But it's interesting how complicated this what I saw was because I've never seen anything like this for a lockup schedule.
Breaking new grounds here. We'll have 1 million people on Mars, bizarre IPO precedents, but you're going to hear all about it to my chingoose in the next few podcasts, I'm sure. Whose turn is it to sign off? Ian, is it your
I
turn
think
to
it's
sign?
me. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I think the word is crazy and the market's gonna crash. But what we're saying here is though not investment advice. So be prepared, but not listen to us, okay?
We need to create like a nickname for Ian, like Michael Burry. Like, is
Yeah,
he
he's calling
Asian
every
Michael
crash,
Burry?
right?
Yeah, we got to like he's Asian Michael Burry,
Yeah,
Ian Park.
yeah, everything's wrong. Like the bond for 30 years is 5.2% and 10 years is 4.5%. Like you can just literally put money into 30 years and you get 5% every year. Like and still like money's not moving. It's just everything's wrong. So, I don't know. I'm just confused.
Mr. Everything is
Well,
wrong. I like it.
everything is wrong, but it feels so right. Guys, I'll see you at the next Three Commas podcast. Thank you again.
All right, see you next
Alrighty, see
week.
you. Bye, Chingus.
Bye, chingoos.
Bye, Tingoose.